When will we learn? You've probably heard that question before, and today Erik Wiese poses that to us in his non-manual speech, which will be 15 minutes. Here he is, Erik Wiese.
Allah Akbar! Allah Akbar! Blam! You're all dead. That's what happened in Paris this weekend. One of these terrorists blew off his explosive vest, and another 5 or 6 of them blew up in other locations around Paris. Six of them killed about 140 Parisians. Allah Akbar. Allah is great. And now we're dead. One of the first things that President Holland did is he instituted some emergency police powers that he didn't have in place before. They went out and made 130 arrests, trying to track down some of the people who had organized this, some of them who had gotten away. You know, the police in our country have never forgotten 9/11, probably because it's their own telephone number. But in addition, we've had the Patriot Act. We've had it in place this entire time. And now they're trying to institute the same thing over in France. The Patriot Act works. It's a huge invasion of our privacy. We don't like it, but if you can find the terrorists before they set off their bombs, we in America have decided that's more important. Security is more important than privacy. But it's a sunlit act. It's going to go away if we don't keep enforcing it. Terrorists wishes they had it. They learn. What else did President Holland do? He decided he was going to go bomb some of the ISIS refineries. Because now, we don't have troops on the ground guarding those refineries. We only have drones in the air, and we have bombs that we can drop. Now we are bombing ISIS's control over the refineries that finance terrorism. Big change from when Bush was in office. When Bush was in office, he was criticized for not doing a good enough job preventing terrorist acts on the Iraqi oil structure. Now, we've declared victory and retreated, and we're bombing ISIS, who has control over that exact same territory, and they have 30,000 troops that are just making a ruckus out of the entire situation. So bad that there are 4 million Syrian refugees, and those are the ones who have been displaced externally. 4 million. Internally, there's over 7.6 million. Now, I always like to do some comparisons, because when President Bush authorized the invasions of Iraq, there was the same number, almost the exact same number of refugees who were displaced in Iraq. The difference was we were deposing a dictator, a killer, a person who hated democracy. The exact opposite is happening now. ISIS has taken over 1/3 of Iraq. So we have the Egyptian air. The Russians are suffering because of the power gap that's over there. Because we withdrew, Russia went into Syria. They wouldn't have gone into Syria if we told them not to, but we didn't tell them not to forcefully enough. So they went in there, and they've lost 260 lives of their own when Egyptian air got blown up. There's so many bombings in Iraq right now, they don't even make our newspaper. Nobody cares. There's 40 people who die every day over there that getting blown up. Turkey just had a recent terrorist attack, 130 over there. What this tells us is you can't run away from our responsibilities as leaders. We either go over there and act as the world's policeman, as Mr. Cohen has mentioned, or our allies get shot. Turkey is our ally. It's a NATO ally. Russia's not our ally. They're suffering because they're trying to do something about it. But we also have all of our allies suffering from all the refugees that are running and flowing over, using up all of their welfare benefits, costing them a fortune. So how did we get here? Well, 9/11 was a big surprise for us. 9/11 is when it started for us. Our defense budget went up from $289 billion to $800 billion in 2001, and it's been there ever since. Money is not the problem. We've been throwing money at this problem ever since George Bush was in office. This joke may not go over too well, but you know, my parents were in New York during 9/11, on September 11th, and all they brought back was this bloody t-shirt. I knew it wouldn't go over well.
It went over.
It bombed, so to speak.
You know,
That's a
no,
good
you're
joke.
going on the list too, just so you know. He's going and you're going on the list.
Didn't exactly bring the house down.
No, that was too much temerity for him.
Twice. You're on the list twice.
I'll return to bloviating. I'm a little bit safer at that. So the Patriot Act I've already talked about. That was helpful. We also had a different mindset. The mindset was a preemptive strike versus arresting. I know a lot of the Democrats at the time thought that we should arrest all of the people that were involved in blowing up the buildings. I know Mr. Gore was of that mindset. But President Bush said, no, this is more than that. This is an act of war, and we need to act accordingly. I remember President Bush brought in a new leader of the CIA, a guy by the name of Eric Kofer. He said, Eric, what are you going to do with these guys? He said, I'm going to enhance interrogate them. He said, really? And then what are you going to do with them? I'm going to find their friends. And then what are you going to do with them? He said, by the time I'm done, those terrorists will have flies dancing on their naked eyeballs. And President Bush said, you're the man for the job. I'm hiring you. You're in charge. Make it happen. And it's because of that enhanced interrogation we found out where Osama bin Laden was. It took 150 days after we found out for President Obama to institute the rescue action to go get him. It would have taken President Bush 15 days to get it done, but it got done. But it wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for enhanced interrogation. Do you guys remember the surge in Iraq when we brought over 100,000 ground troops up to 130,000 ground troops? Ground troops, not just blowing people up from above where nobody ever gets hurt. We actually instituted the surge under President Bush. He got a lot of flack for that from every single Democrat and even some Republicans. But he did it anyways because he knew it was right and he wanted to support the blood and the lives that had already been spent by our servicemen who expected a commander-in-chief to actually get the job done. That's what total victory is. Total victory means putting your own political career on the line to support the men and women who are serving this country and bleeding for it. That's the mindset we need to beat terrorists. And those were ground forces. Let's look at Guantanamo. When we found these bad guys, where did we put them? Put them over in Guantanamo Bay. We interrogated them, and we kept them there. We kept them there indefinitely. How's our current president dealing with Guantanamo? He views it as a fishing trip. It's more like a catch and release. We caught these guys, we had them long enough. Who can we bribe to get rid of them? How can we close down Guantanamo? You guys have all heard that. He doesn't take it seriously. He takes terrorism as seriously as going fishing. Catch and release. We need enhanced interrogation instead of relying only on drones. I have no problem blowing up the bad guys from above. But as John McCain pointed out recently, 3/4 of our bombers are coming back without having expended their ordnance. They can't find targets. If we don't have people on the ground, how do we find good targets? It's no good just going and bombing a desert, having nothing to show for it. We need good targets. We need people on the ground finding them out, identifying good ones. In the newspaper recently, we had a tragedy. Medical clinics got bombed instead of terrorist camps. That's a lot less likely to happen if you have people on the ground who can check on our targets. And finally, the Iran Treaty. What is going on with the Iran Treaty? The U.S. capitulation to Iran Treaty. I mean, this is just ridiculous. We had Stuxnets. Stuxnets was a way to get rid of all their centrifuges. It was a program with Israel and with the United States. It's a secret program that's not so secret. And we destroyed about a third of their 10,000 centrifuges. We destroyed them by making them run too fast. And it blew up the ball bearings. And these ball bearings are so fine that you can only find them in the United States or in Germany, and we weren't selling them anymore. So with a third of their centrifuges destroyed, do you know what Iran offered us in exchange for us giving them $100 billion? They agreed to dismantle 1/3 of their centrifuges. The same third we'd already destroyed. And our president thinks that's great. $100 billion. Do you know how much we pay to keep Israel safe each year? $3 billion. We pay Israel $3 billion that they use to buy all of our F-16s and all of our ammunition. And we just gave $100 billion to their arch enemy, somebody who says daily, 2 to 3 times a day, death to Israel, death to the infidels, death to America. Did any of you ever read Mein Kampf by Hitler? I got forced to read that book when I was in college. I could only manage about 20 pages. 4 times per page it said, death to the Jews, death to the Jews, death to the Jews. And there was only one person who took that seriously, which was Winston Churchill. Why do we have a president who is repeating the debacles of history? Why do we have American voters who don't care? Why are we allowing this to continue? Harris is asking itself that same question. So, what's the answer? Well, let's look at a couple ways that the Democrats run a war. Benghazi. Benghazi got overrun. Mistakes happen in war. Not everything is always grand and glorious. But did we send in troops and reinforcements? There were 600 requests for reinforcements, and none of them, I don't know how many came across Hillary Clinton's desk. We will never know because all of the emails have been erased accidentally. They're all gone. So we don't know how many of them came across her desk, but we let what happened in Benghazi happen. And instead of blaming the people who did it, the terrorists, who got blamed? Terry Jones for having a burn-a-Quran day. And Terry Jones' fault was he didn't realize that it was already bring a plane to work day. What's another thing that Hillary Clinton has done? 20% of our uranium supplies are in Canada. For $6 million that's been paid to the Clinton Foundation, she decided to authorize Russia buying that 20% of the uranium. There's a Russian company that bought it. Bill Clinton got a $500,000 speaking fee to a company that was allied with the uranium company that bought it. And so the State Department, not surprisingly, came out and said, oh yeah, that doesn't affect the security of the United States. We'll go ahead and allow 20% of uranium supplies to be purchased from our closest ally and given to people who are now invading Georgia, the Crimea, and putting extra troops into Syria. We can trust them. That's how the Democrats run a war. As long as the Clinton Foundation goes well, who cares? So what's the solution? Lamar Alexander's come out and said, we need to put 10,000 men on the ground. We need to put 10,000 men on the ground, and we need to get our friends to do the same thing. We need to get our allies, each and every one of them. We need to get Saudi Arabia, we need to get Jordan, we need to get Turkey, each to donate 10,000 troops. If we had 50 or 60,000 troops, we could mop up these ISIS guys with our leadership. That's how you fight a war. You act serious about it. It's not a fishing trip. It's not catch and release. It's not how big your speaking fee is. It's not treating Iran like they're going to help us out. Iran is a terrorist. Our own State Department, run by Hillary, or used to be run by Hillary, has labeled the entire country as a terrorist state. They still have 2 of our hostages. Why are we inviting them and the Russians in to do the job that we should have been doing? I've tried to tell some jokes and they're not funny. Just like this whole situation isn't funny. It's deadly serious. Mr. Cohen talked about how we need to take it seriously. Right now we're being distracted. Climate change is not as important as what is going on in the Middle East. Preventing orcas from breeding is not as important as total victory in the Middle East. A living wage to increase unemployment is not as important as the war in the Middle East. And Bernie Sanders confiscating 90% of our taxes probably is as important, but it's a distraction from what's happening in the Middle East. Elect a war president, vote Republican. Mr. Toastmaster.